Hi everyone, welcome to Bar Stories. Today we're diving into a major case in Australian law from 1992. This High Court case made a significant impact on the right to a fair trial, especially when it comes to legal representation. If you've ever wondered about the legal implications of not having a lawyer when facing serious charges, this case is for you. Before we get into the details, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a breakdown of important legal cases. So let's get started with the story of and why it still matters today. The case centers around Olaf Dietrich, who was charged with importing a trafficable quantity of heroin into Australia. Born in a German refugee camp in 1952, Dietrich migrated to Australia at age 9. In 1986, he was caught smuggling heroin into Melbourne, concealed internally. Despite being arrested, Dietrich applied for publicly funded legal assistance several times but was denied. The big question was, could someone like Dietrich, who couldn't afford a lawyer, get a fair trial without legal representation? This case changed the landscape of Australian law by focusing on that exact issue. Before this case, Australian law didn't guarantee a right to legal representation at public expense, even for serious criminal charges. While it was preferable to have a lawyer, the High Court's earlier rulings, especially in 1979, made it clear that representation wasn't necessary for a fair trial. But this decision sparked controversy. Many argued it was impossible for an unrepresented person to receive a fair trial. The case aimed to challenge that notion. When Dietrich's case reached the High Court, the main argument was that his trial had been unfair because he didn't have legal representation. His legal team argued that going to trial without a lawyer in a serious criminal case, like drug smuggling, constituted a miscarriage of justice. They also pointed out that Dietrich had tried multiple times to get legal aid, but had been denied. The High Court was asked to decide whether the trial should have been delayed, called an adjournment, until Dietrich could find representation. In a groundbreaking 5-2 decision, the High Court agreed with Dietrich. The judges ruled that if someone facing serious criminal charges can't afford a lawyer and doesn't have one through no fault of their own, the trial should be delayed until they get legal representation. If not, the trial would be considered unfair. However, the court did not say that the government had to pay for a lawyer in every case. Instead, it said that forcing someone to go through a trial without a lawyer could make the trial unfair, which would be a violation of their right to a fair trial. This decision set a major precedent. Courts must ensure that people facing serious charges have the chance for legal representation or risk their trial being unfair. The Dietrich case had immediate effects on how legal aid is provided in Australia. Courts could now pressure governments to provide legal assistance in serious cases, especially when the accused had no means to afford a lawyer. However, this decision also stirred up debate. Critics argued it could lead to more legal aid funds being redirected to criminal cases, leaving less money for civil or family law matters. In fact, after the Dietrich case, legal aid in Australia became a hot topic, with the government cutting its budget for legal aid in the late 1990s, creating even more pressure on the system. After this case, courts had to consider a new test, the Dietrich test, for whether a trial should be delayed due to lack of legal representation. This test asks three main questions. 1. Is the accused facing a serious charge? 2. Are they indigent, meaning they cannot afford legal representation? And 3. Is it through no fault of their own that they haven't secured representation? If the answer to all three is yes, the court should adjourn the trial until legal representation is available. But the court left some parts of this test vague. For example, what counts as a serious charge? Is it just any charge that might result in imprisonment? And what does it mean to be indigent? Does someone have to sell their house to afford a lawyer? Or is owning a home enough to disqualify them from legal aid? In conclusion, Dietrich vs. the Queen fundamentally changed the way Australian courts handle serious criminal trials. While it didn't create an absolute right to legal representation at public expense, it did establish that going to trial without a lawyer in certain circumstances could result in an unfair trial. Today, the case is still cited in courts as part of Australia's legal foundation for the right to a fair trial. It also led to continued discussions about the role of legal aid and access to justice in Australia, topics that remain relevant today. Thanks for tuning into Bar Stories. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Dietrich v. the Queen, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and check out our